Well, I started my video off and I erased a few videos. The videos that I erased that I did not post as of yet consist of a description of the patriarchal to matriarchal to matriarchal to patriarchal system and a synopsis, which I can make it fast or try to make as fast as possible with the little time I do have on my phone. The whole idea here is the destruction of the black herdsmen, shepherds, and farmers as a resort, as a way to facilitate a community of blacks that would be raised, developed, and grown in the inner city ghettos. I apologize for stuttering. I had to get my words together. The goal of this video is to start at the very, very, very beginning. At the very beginning of this evolution in this particular community. This particular community's church home is here. Majority of this property was owned, operated as farmland, shepherd land, and herdsman land by these people here. Vast majority of these people, this particularly is my family lineage. On my mother's side, which is we have Willie F. O'Quinn, U.S. Army, Korea. Orrin O'Quinn, U.S. Army, Korea. And then I'm not here yet, but I'm pretty sure if I'm around here long enough, or whether they come up with the psychotronic machine and they get finished with their electronic harassment, I'll be here. U.S. Marine Corps, Afghanistan, Iraq. 1987 to whenever they decide to send them up to press the button. In particular, every single person we can describe here in this cemetery that died past 1965. And 1975 in particular in this area, but 1965 because we brought people back home after they had been deceased to the family cemetery so that we could bury them. Particularly, this is a herdsman and a farmer here. He died in 99, October the 3rd. And I want you to pay very close attention to these dates. Orrin O'Quinn, U.S. Army, March 30th, 1931 to February 15th, 2006. April 9th, 1927, October 3rd, 1999. And here, an unmarked tomb, is my particular grandfather here, their brother, Esques O'Quinn, which was around 55 or 56 at the age of his death. So he was around 1943 or 1941. And here's my mother, my great aunt that raised me between 1941. She was born October the 6th, 1941. Now, in particular, these two individuals of close relation to each other died in the same year. She died February the 24th, 1999. He dies October the 3rd, 1999. So, in particular, after receiving so many threats of death, not being allowed to be told I was going to drive, walk, being gang stalked by being subjected to religious fraud, religious criminality, being subjected to a situation where you cannot even defend yourself. I decided to go to the family cemetery and just kind of get you a picture of what they actually do and what hip hop. Going back into our segment again, we're leading back around to our segment about hip hop and what hip hop actually is. Here we have the death. When I was very young, we have the death of a first cousin, Denard Banyard. He was an inheritor. January 25th, 1979, November 7th, 1995. We have the soccer player, the YMCA. We have the death of another young one, Ricky O'Quinn, September the 29th, 1960, March 23rd, 1982, 22 years old. We have the death of another young one, Jazzy D. Banyard, December the 15th, 1993, November the 24th, 1998, 5 years old. All right. at 5 years old. Now, this particular side of the family, they got it the worst, because the names were Banyard. Howard Banyard, June 10th, 1960, November 3rd, 2003. He made it to 43 years old. Catherine D. Banyard, June 1st, 1967, December 14th, 2004, 67. She was around, what, 35? Maybe 35, 36 years old? Because if this is 67, it's 60 in 2003, and he's exactly 43. And we subtract, say, we add that to that, and that make him 44. So we 44 and subtract 44 from 7. We get about 36, 37, 30, between 36 to 39 years old. Here we have another young guy. He just recently died in 1984 to January 13, 1984 to September 3rd, 2015. All right. Here we go again. This is the production of hip hop. These are the post hip hop era deaths that are located in this particular family, in this family, and this family. Now, if we go past and beyond hip hop, and people say, well, how can you correlate the deaths of just some individuals who could have died, who can be explained to psychological concepts such as just loneliness, death of family members, just causing grief and different things of that nature. So, well, how can we out rule those particular issues? Well, particularly when looking at the nature of neuropsychology, neuroscience, psychotronic machines, the development of gang stalking, electronic gang stalking, mental gang stalking, psychotronic harassment. We can go to this point to say, well, considering the neuroscience, considering that hip hop was branded through this way, we start here. We start here at an age of an individual born on August 8th, 1914, who died August 3rd, 2004, from 2003 at her 89th, the day before her 89th birthday. This is her son here, who also died in the post-hip-hop era. Now, we want to make sure we understand that every death that we're going to describe here is the death of an elderly individual who would be an elder in the community today. She would possibly be passed. An elder herdsman or an elder shepherd in the community today. She would be passed. She's at 2003. We don't know she would be passed. We have one grave that we're going to look at that's going to have an individual over 114 years old, because this would be the family. This is the genetic history that's associated with the familial, with the mother's line. We don't quite know yet. All right. Here we're going to start here. All right. Here we have Lawrence Burrell. He would have been an elderly man of 77 or 87 in the community, a land-owning elderly herdsman with 2 granddaughters who now are considered to be mentally handicapped, who also own his property. 3 granddaughters, actually, I know. All right. We go to here, particularly to here. Now, pay attention to these dates. All these dates are post-drugs, post-civil rights, post-gangster dates. And what I mean by post-gangster dates are dates in which in time gang members became a part of the black community. So here at 2003, we can see here that this was the first woman at 2001, 2002. She was, I think her first drive-by was 2001, 2002, and it's just her at her house by herself. Her son has been dead since 97. All right, we can go here. Just follow with me here. I might do some editing on the video just so things can make logical sense. We go here at this unmarked grave of Essex O'Quinn, my direct grandfather, my direct descendant. Meaning that this is the unmarked grave of Essex Craft. This is Essex Craft, my actual name. And it's not Essie Craft, but Essex Craft. And this is the man whose name that I carry whose given name that I carry. Essex O'Quinn. an unmarked grave. At this site of this unmarked grave, Essex O'Quinn's home now is being used as a drug home as we speak. As we speak. Now we're going to pay attention to all these deaths of the elders in the community. This lady here would have been 77 to 87 years old, elder in the community. He had already become an elder in the community. He was 77 years old at the time of his death, 76 to 77. This is an elder in the community here. This is an elder in the community here, which would have been of around 71 to 73, 77 years old. This elder here in the community, he would have been around 80, 81 years old. All right. Now pay attention to these dates. At this point of all these dates is we can check drug history and drug records, drug arrest records. At some point in time associated with every date here and on described, there will be some drug affiliated catastrophe in this state in which it can be linked to some political figure, in which it can be linked to some religious figure, in which it can then be linked to a church that has received financial benefits on the deaths of these herdsmen. Because this is a church of herdsmen. In fact, this particular church of herdsmen does not even have an address. You cannot even find it on Google Maps. You cannot find it on Google online. You cannot find it anywhere. When searched and researched properly, you cannot find this church. So in fact, even the Christian church of herdsmen has no representation in the Christian world. And I'm an Islamic man now. But that is something that might be a reason I'm an Islamic man. So there is no representation of this church on the Christian world map in this state because it belongs to a herdsman. It was a church founded by herdsmen and belonged to herdsmen. This here, all this is a line of herdsmen. We must take in these are first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins. This individual here, his father, he was a herdsman. And in fact, I don't do a lot of talking about them because they still have descendants that are alive. And when you feel when people have descendants that are still alive, you feel the repercussions because the area now is a gang organized area. It's a heavily drug trafficked area. It is a heavily cocaine, marijuana trafficked area. And majority of these men were herdsmen who grew marijuana in their gardens. That could be illegal at the time. In some points of their lives, it was illegal. And at some points of these people's lives, it was not illegal. Meaning that at this individual's life over here, this lady's life over here in 1914, it had just became illegal. So her grandfather grew it. Her father grew marijuana in his garden because it was not illegal. So we're not talking about marijuana. We're talking about the trafficking and the use of illegal substances, class 1 to class 2, class 3, class 4 narcotics, such as cocaine, heroin, and crack. We're not talking about an herb that can be grown. We're not talking about something that cannot be tested for, or that could not be tested for, or that was not even cared to be tested for, unless you were in the urban area with inner city youth, which heavily traffic it and use it as initiation rites into gangs. So basically, my pain medication became an initiation rite into gangs. Here's the death of another herdsman here, right here. She's a descendant of a herdsman. Here's the death of another herdsman right here. Now pay attention to her. I never called her LA, but that's what they call her. There's a death of another herdsman here. This is a crow here. I met the white descendant, their white descendant in Biloxi. In fact, I'm going to friend her on Facebook here soon. Actually, we are friends on Facebook. So this is the black descendant of a white lady I know now, or probably her elder, if we want to go beyond the racial barrier and go strictly to human development, from the human ideal. In 1919, this individual here, again, we go back to that. Now, some of these graves are missing. Now we pay attention. All the deaths of these people, some more than others, are correlated with the drug trade, with the drug trade. So let's move on. I apologize if I'm talking fast and my nose is stopped up. I'm being flashed. I'm in an open area right now. I think they want me in an open casket. I don't know why they said that, but I'm in an open area right now. The psychoelectronic thing is in the sky. We move on to a different side of the family here, where we have two World War II veterans. World War II veteran here. And we move on to that's a World War II veteran. And we move on here to a World War I veteran that is a part of the family who left no descendants. Who also left no descendants. Lived to 90 years old though. He might have left a few descendants. He did, just not in this area. So it's kind of hard. He's a World War I vet, so he was a part of that generation. So that generation had a lot of respect for his herdsmen, shepherds. In fact, it was one of the, if we look at economic history, it was one of the main generations that participated in the development and the future development of large commercial farming, providing blacks with opportunities to farm, and actually employing blacks that farm to have jobs. Now I have to admit that this could be a slightly difference between my life and their life because of my religious worldview. But again, my Christian world that I grew up in is not even on the map, because these are all descendants of herdsmen. These are all descendants of shepherds. Now, rap is pretty straightforward. There's no innuendos, there's no clues, there's no perks, there's no clerks, there's no quirks, there's nothing. It's simply straightforward. There's a set of graves here that's missing, a whole set of headstones here missing. In fact, this line was already full all the way to the very edge. This line should have started back in, this line in particular here should have started in 1913. Yeah, we started in 1913. Now, this is the family. These are the originators of the family. These are the originators here. In fact, I don't even know where the rest of the tombstones and headstones are. Some are there, some are here, some are covered. Some people might be buried on top of others. We don't quite know at this point in time. And I'm not saying it hasn't been maintenance well, but just saying that there's been 2 or 3 maintenancers in the last 200 years or so. So 100 and so years. So let's get to this point. Let's get to the statement, the point we're trying to make here. All right. We do not know, nor are we sure, that the descendants of these herdsmen ever produced any children. These were not drunkards. Some were drunkards. In fact, this man here, so we can kind of eliminate all the stereotypes that can be defined within this particular area. We can eliminate all the stereotypes that can be defined. This particular gentleman here, he was never a drunkard, ever. The most I've ever seen this man drink is a beer with dinner every 6 or 7 months or so. All right. So at some point in time in his life, he was never married, he was never a drunkard, nor was he a homosexual. He was a Jehovah's Witness. And as a Jehovah's Witness, we just buried him with the rest of the family. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're trying to do to me too. But here we have a group of people. These stones here, you can kind of see these stones here kind of on top of each other. So we was kind of running out of room. So these stones here kind of on top of each other. So we got here, 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 here. We don't quite know who these are anymore. We definitely know that they're some of the progenitors of the family, but we don't know who they are anymore. That's just only a small set of people that we know. Coming down here, this That's a whole line right there that's covered up. That's no longer, we can no longer find the names. So we can look at those deeds. Once we get to the deeds and describe the deeds and discuss the deeds, we can find our names. We'll definitely know who they are at that point in time. So this is the issue that we have here: the death and the murder of African American shepherds and landowners, to the point where the inner city people or descendants or distant relatives, the distant descendants of the distant descendants, return home to murder their own families for drug money, for drug representation, for drug politics, for gang politics, for life without liberty. Neither of these males here, above described males, are felons, or even people who've ever been in a jail cell. I don't think I know any of these people here. Now this is one right here. She starts at 1870 to 1965. 1870 to 1965. Winnie E. Donegan, 95 years old. So if we can see 80 years old. As we can see 80 years old. Oh no, 69 years old. So as we can see here, of course lifestyle issues and genes have a lot to do with it. But we can see there's a lot of generational gap between a 90-year-old mother and a 60-year-old son. Drugs, 1970. We can see that there's a large gap between a 90-year-old mother and a 60-year-old son. And we have the same phenomenon here. I might have to edit this a little bit because I'm being flashed, so I might be all over the place, so I apologize. So I hope you're following me. I'm not making complete sentences at some point in time. It's a lot of information to get out, and it's a short period of time that I have on this cell phone to record. Here, we have a 90-year-old mother and a 60-year-old son. Drugs. The death of these shepherds has been the only issue in the black community for the last 60 years. It has not been poverty. It has not been drugs, gangs, education. And these are educated people. These are people who have traveled around the world. World War I veteran, World War II veteran, educated mother, reading and writing. In fact, many of them, before the first church burnt down, many of them learned to read and write at this very church here. So these were educated, literate people of agricultural sciences, of their 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, of agricultural sciences, botany sciences, not necessarily biological sciences, but definitely of botanists. Definitely botanists. This is the heritage of these people. However, the heritage of these people no longer exists in the black community because the black community kills its own people for drugs. So here we have the death and the murder and the continuous stalking of myself and all the descendants of these shepherds. This is a herdsman's church, a shepherd's church, where the individuals were shepherds, cattle shepherds, goat shepherds, majority goat shepherds, cattle shepherds, goat shepherds, chicken farmers, property owners of 200-300 acres of property shared amongst friends and family. So every individual here descended from a literate people where the average curriculum, the educational curriculum, was of a higher standard than the education curriculum of the local schools in this area today. meaning that the qualifications and standards due to the fact that the use of this neuroscience, electronic harassment, neuropsychological weaponry that's being used for political and social purposes has taken away the desire to learn and made it easy for me to use what is in one's brain into another's brain. And this is information that has been pushed out recently. But we all know once the information is released, then that it is released at a point of safety, at a point where the weapon was used to develop a standard of safety for the people who were developing it, and tested on and against people that were threatened, that could have possibly threatened the development, or that could have possibly used the weapon for good purposes other than the destruction of a particular community. We do understand this. We do understand this from history in itself. Here, we don't know who's here. So you know what I'm saying? Now we have a culture of people where every person in this community were shepherds. A majority of the males did not produce children, even though they came from fathers who produced 10 children. Majority of the females did not produce, that produced 2 or 3 children, who lived to 100, whose sons lived to 50 or 60 years old, whose daughters lived to 50 or 60 years old, who only produced 1 child. In fact, I have an auntie that's missing here. She moved quite a distance away from the shepherding community into a home with a more socially apt non-shepherding male, and that male provided her with an outlet, and her children with an outlet, to escape the horrible lifestyle that has been described in black movies and in black poverty, because they're not describing their own lives. These people had to hunt, fish, live off the land, build their own wells, build their own houses, and do everything for themselves as a community. That means that they had to save all their money together and buy any cars, clothes. This is what they had to do. So what we have going on here is we listen to rap music as a direct economic representation of what's going on in the world. And we listen to phrases such as Kiki Shepherd. We listen to phrases, names, nicknames, French names, nicknames, Nicholas names, King Nicholas names of his slaves. We look at that and we take that as a serious representation of what's going on in today's world. Then we have a theory, and we have a accurate working theory of why and whom the psychotronic and electronic harassment weapons will be used against, who will stop from reproducing, and whom else they will hurt. And this is just the father's, this is just the mother's side. The father's side gets much, much, much worse. Much, much worse. Much, much worse. It gets so worse until the father reads, such and such died at this point in time. This son died here, the firstborn son of this one died here, and the firstborn son of this one died here. And at this point, I guess the firstborn son of this one wants to die here. It gets much, much worse on the father's side. Much, much worse. This is just the mother's side. And the mother in herself loved and respected, the biological mother. She has not yet understood that every single person that she slept with in her life, and I don't mean sexually, that she's loved, that she's married, every husband, has been a facet of development, not slept with. Excuse me, that sounds bad, I'm gonna edit it out. Has been a facet of development to where the individual can be moved and taken away from this community to the point where she can produce at least one ignorant male that will be a part of the drug gang, and that's my baby brother. Or that's my brothers in general. She's to move farthest way possible to produce enough males that would be a part of the drug politics. Now, they say the drug game is over. I've heard people say this. This is not over. Look at the deaths of all these people that you caused. One way or another associated with drug politics. One way or another, an illness associated with the psychotronic death, with gang stalking, One way or the other associated with gang stalking, with the psychotronic, electronic harassment. I know that word sounds like something you read in Futurism. In fact, it is something you're going to read in Futurism. So if you're a magazine reader, go get Futurism and you might read it. But and that again goes to Future, which is another hip hop person. So hip hop again is the rich man, the rich elite's way of eliminating the elite population of a group of African Americans, because the elite population of a group, as defined according to the religious backgrounds of these people, is and will always be the people who shepherd it. That will be considered the elite population of these people. So as a result, the blacks have eliminated all of that, and they're on the way to eliminate more and more and more. Hip-hop is the jesters. Hip-hop and rap artists and entertainers are the jesters to the elite, telling the stories of their murders, of this group of people, of this industry of Christians, Muslims, and any other facet of black prosperity. Hip-hop is the hip-hop, and I repeat again, hip-hop entertainers, rappers are the jesters, fools, jokers. They are the people who tell the stories to the kings and queens of our generations of the murders of an elite group of blacks that were not described nor contained, not described nor expressed any form of elitism, to the rest of the world, because they sent out their own people of their own skin and bloodline, sometimes to murder. So again, I repeat, hip-hop is not music. It is the stories of the murders of African and African-American herdsmen. All right? These people, they're the only people that have ever gotten paid money in the black community. We have people who worked 90 years, 100 years. We have people who worked 200 years. 100 years. We have families who worked 200 years. We have families who would have been old money and not new money. We have families that have accumulated old money and not new money. And we cannot figure out at any point in time what is actually going on with these people. Well, here's what's going on. The blacks in their communities are killing. Now, the last little lineage left out here, the last male possibly has no children, and the next male possibly has a group of children who are so infatuated with hip-hop that they're what you call, they're like the people that you describe, that you can find in the DSM-5 manuals, that they describe as self-harmers. They're self-harmers. They're people who cut themselves. There are people who take pills, who drank to have fun, but then drank to poison. There are people who seek out to physically and bodily harm and cause bodily injury and harm to themselves. This is what they are. So there's no reason for hip hop to be respected. It's coming from a black man who grew up his whole life listening to rap music as a herdsman. Okay? There's no reason. There's no reason. Okay? This is old money. Right? All this was old money. Old money. Groups of people who had developed themselves through hard work, to sometimes enslaving by their mother enslaved the son, and the son had to be a slave to the had to practice sharecropping with the local white guy and do double the work, 12 to 16 hours, sometimes 24 hours worth of work, just to make it and live and accumulate cars and things of this nature. Nothing was given. Nothing was passed from one hand to the other hand in a small baggie that cost $20 a sack or $50 a sack. This is gold standard money. And we are getting rid of all blacks that inherit gold standard money. And that is pure economics of hip hop. Okay. All right, we're going to go into the front of the church. I hope I gave you a good explanation of what's really going on right here. Now, believing what I'm saying is like believing whether or not you believe Jesus Christ was real. Some people don't believe it, some people do. Whatever. Some people say the evidence suggests that Jesus Christ was there. Some people say the evidence suggests that Jesus Christ wasn't there. But overall, the evidence here suggests that there's something a little odd going on with the death of all the herdsmen in the black communities and the accumulation of wealth of blacks. Because at some point, there was no way for an African American to even be associated with a Caucasian woman. We have the death of Emmett Till in the state of Mississippi for whistling at a white woman, while at the same time we have a prize athlete and fighter married to a white woman. This does not make sense. Emmett Till came from the home of a herdsman. He came from the home of a herdsman. We have a black boxer and black athletes married to white women. But we have the death of a black child for whistling at a grown white woman because he was a herdsman. And it's just that simple. His family came from herdsmen. So this is the issue here. This issue is not an issue of race. This is not an issue of skin color. This is an issue of occupational background, occupational immunities, occupational development, where one's immunities could possibly develop genes against common diseases that are associated with the urban inner cities. So salmonella immunities, hay fever and common cold immunities. Immunities where in the local doctor office or not the local doctor office, but immunities where the combination of these things over a period of time cannot produce either a large sum of money for the white masters, or cannot produce or can produce children who have become immune to the issues that we find today. And let me try to clear this up a little bit, because they're flashing me at this point in time, and while they're flashing me, it's really hard to talk and it's really hard to think. So and I apologize. I'm not my words. I have a master's degree, and my words don't come out the way I want them to come out anymore. It's not because my mind is getting old. It's just simply because they're continuously electrocuting me so that my words don't come out the way I want them to come out. So let me try to give you another example and explain to you in a different way. The amount of money, the amount of funds allocated to the health industry, to the economics of society is based off its people. Once the economics of the society is based off its people, then one can understand that it is based off the needs of its people. So the needs and desires of its people to grow and develop the community. Once the needs and the desires of the people grow and develop the community, then the community then develops into a larger form of a community, maybe a city. At this point in time, we understand that a city is based off the economic needs of the people within it. So, economically, none of these people needed drugs. Economically, none of these people needed adultery. Economically, none of these people needed anything that can be found within associated with hip hop. Disrespect of elders, women, guns. Many of those had guns. Some of them shot each other. But what we can find is that it doesn't matter what happens, that these people, all these people that's participating in this evolution of black development have made a very, very large, gross mistake. They've made a gross mistake. And I do mean of the economic bottom line. And I want to explain to you, as we go back to the immunities part, a person who is around chickens becomes immune often to the things that are inside of the chicken. A person who is around cows becomes immune often to the things that are found in cows. A person who is around horses becomes immune often to the things that are found in horses. A person who is around dogs often becomes immune to things that are found inside of dogs, because disease passed from mammal to mammal. A person who is around monkeys that have become immune to HIV can become immune to HIV. Every disease, the genes can develop an immunity. In fact, we know this as the sickle cell trait, or we can say that this is an old system of development that the ancients used. So as a result of this sense, of this ideology, and all of this being theirs and their deaths turning over back to someone else, not of their color, descent, or origin, that does not like black people when he's here, but love